Welcome back to the Summer 2020 Playoffs, where we already had a hell of a series just yesterday to kick things off. We'll see if FlyQuest and Evil Geniuses can deliver with the same amount of gusto in their match today. As you can see, we're down to just the three of us, myself, Prolly, and Mark, which really just means I get to have more opinions today.
It's actually because I got a new bedspread and a headboard, and I needed to make more space on the screen to show this off. So we killed crumbs so I could show this.
Well done, man. The stepping up the interior design game. Now, to be honest, is that you or is that the girlfriend?
It's 100% Ashley.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. Mark wears white shirts if he could get away with it on air today.
I'd be in a hoodie right now if I could get away with it.
We got lucky with the navy blue. But speaking of playoffs so far, yesterday, Golden Guardians, let's talk about them, because not only did they kick off the 2020 postseason with an upset sweep, but they picked up their first ever franchise win for the org, and they did it against TSM.
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, on the desk, we had all predictions for TSM. I think it was going to be really close, 3-2, but I did not think, even if Golden Guardians did win, that it would be a 3-0. And it was so impressive how they did it. Everyone stepped up at different points in the series. Haunter had some great Mordekaiser plays. Closer had some great plays. DeMonte's Ziggs, I know Plarley's a big fan of.
Yeah, Ziggs. He came back, and he's 2-0. I mean, we talked about kind of mismatches in the lanes and stuff, and we talked about, like, Bjergsen versus DeMonte is going to be a mismatch, and that really didn't come true at all. He held his own versus Bjergsen the whole time and had a lot of impactful plays. And then, yeah, I mean, speaking about the bot lane, there's not enough good things to say about FBI and Huhi. They completely smashed, and they did it in such a dominating fashion. This is kind of the way Team Liquid used to win with Doublelift, where in the best-of-5 series, Doublelift was winning both sides of matchups, and he was kind of just ruining pick ban for the coaches. I was one of those coaches. I was like, I don't know how to draft against this guy. But yesterday, that was what Huhi and FBI were doing. They were playing both sides of the Kate-Ash matchup, and eventually Team Liquid TSM just had to ban the Morgana, because they just couldn't deal with the blind pick Morgana. That's pretty crazy. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and even though it was a 3-0, TSM had moments where I thought that they were going to win at least a game. Like Spica had a great game one. Bjergsen had some good moments. Even the bot lane had plays where it's like, okay, TSM should win this game, but they never actually could close it out. And like Probably saying, I think a large part of that is due to just how good and consistent the bot lane for Golden Guardians was.
FBI and Huhi popping off all series long. Again, when it comes to all-pro voting, and we'll get to that in just a moment, FBI made the conversation quite interesting, to say the least. But, coupled with FBI's success comes Doubleless, slip in that he has been handed a postseason loss for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And Huhi deserves a lot of credit as well. You see him starting some of these plays off, landing critical bindings. His Morgana was a nightmare, and clearly Treats did not have the champion pool to match it. The fact that they had to go to red side, and then on red side, they also had to ban the Morgana themselves, because if they left it up, they could play Kate Ashe again, Morgana Ashe again, or they just first pick the Kate themselves. So, like Probably was saying, nightmare fuel playing against Golden Guardians bot lane.
Winning both sides of the matchup feels good. For Doublelift, it's his first domestic best-of-5 loss since 2016 spring against CLG in the finals.
4 years.
13 series?
Yeah, that's a long time to not lose a best-of-5. I bet it was a bit shocking yesterday. Not just saying that they lost the series, but if he ever looks at this stat and he's like, oh, yeah, it's been 4 years since I lost this. Like, that's got to be a crazy feeling.
And it's where the loss came from, right? The 2016 one, hey, it was in finals against CLG,
right.
Okay, this is in the first round of playoffs that they're getting swept, Wasn't a close back-and-forth 5-game series. They got trounced.
Yeah,
honestly.
I mean, that's the thing, right? It's not only was it an upset, it's that it was the clean sweep upset, 3-0 Golden Guardians over TSM. Coming into the series yesterday, the overall record between the two teams, Golden Guardians was touting a 1-11 record against TSM. Pretty abysmal. After yesterday, though, 4-11. I mean, look, just a couple more best-of-5s, and they're going to be right back to even.
Yeah,
More than a couple. They need 3 best
need
of
three.
5s.
They need 3
to
best
catch
of
up.
5s,
And they have
right.
to 3-0 all of them.
All right, so you lose an upper bracket to play them again in lower bracket to knock them out. Another 3-0, so that'll get it up to 7 and 11. You're getting close, and then you just
Yeah, you don't want to wait till next year, Golden Guardians. So we got to start picking up those best of 5 wins sooner rather than later. Now, yesterday we did have some technical issues that didn't allow us to get an interview with the player of the series immediately following it. But thankfully, FBI was able to catch up with the Tigers shortly after the show wrapped. So let's take a look at that now.
I am so happy to be getting some words from FBI following a tremendous victory for Golden Guardians. All right, I know you've had some time to simmer down a little bit, but I want to get your initial impressions because you defied expectations for a lot, not just taking the victory from TSM, but a 3-0 at that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say coming into the series, I don't think any of us expected a 3-0. I think TSM is still a really good team, but we had a good game plan going in, I would say. The draft, we kind of predicted most of what they would do. And I think just getting Bjergsen off carry threats was just really huge in this series win, yeah.
Sounds like you had very much of a team plan going into this, considering the record against TSM in the past, but you specifically had to lane against Doublelift, who had not dropped a best-of-5 series in the past 4 years up until this point. What were some specifications that you were considering when it comes to this specific matchup?
I think we knew that they would prioritize the Caitlyn really heavily, so we just had a good idea of the bot matchup. I feel like we've played that in practice, and me and Huhi just have like a really good understanding of how to punish in that matchup. And yeah, I think it showed today. Yeah.
Even though you did have a very strong performance in the laning phase and punishing the matchup, but it also felt like you as a player were much more team-oriented, even bringing more team-type builds on someone like Ashe instead of prioritizing things like Blade of the Rune King for the laning phase. Why did you decide to go in with such a focus on being aggressive in these fight situations?
I'm not sure, honestly. I think the Essence River build is just pretty good versus Caitlyn in particular. It kind of forces her to use her cleanse whenever arrow, and then it's going to be up sooner. Like, my arrow will be up a lot sooner than her cleanse. And even though I missed a lot of arrows, like, that's kind of the idea behind the build. And yeah, I think me and Huhi today were really more focused on like the team objective. I think we had a lot of bot priority, so instead of like hitting the turret, which is what I usually want to do, I think Huhi really controlled me in the series and told me like, yo, just come up, help us get Herald, and yeah, it brought us the win, so it was good.
And that control really did pay off. It was an exciting series to see. I mean, triple TP for a backdoor, that'll do it for you in the audience. But we can't overlook some of the mistakes that lead to those exciting moments, right? Some inconsistencies in the mid game. How does that inform your preparation going into future best of 5s now that you have this one under your belt?
Yeah, I think it's a really obvious weakness of ours. Like, the mid late game is still not really polished, and I think a lot of teams know that also. Like, it's pretty obvious we have really big leads and then we manage to somehow lose the game. But like, we're aware of it, and I think most of it comes down to just communication. I think in the mid late game there's just a lot of communication and not much being done. So we're just trying to tone down and be more calm and really focus on setting up the map in the mid to late game.
And it shows. This is the first playoff series victory for Golden Guardians as a franchise. And I do want to focus a bit more on your play. You were player of the series after all. And with your coach Inero being a guest on Hotline League this past Monday, saying that you have always been this good player. The wins just weren't there. What perspective do you hold on whether you've always been an unsung hero or it's something that's been catalyzed by recent progress?
Well, I think obviously we do a lot of practice internally, like scrims and stuff, but I think I was never able to really perform well on stage. And like, I don't know whether that's nerves or whatever, but I think like the online format has really actually helped me. I think there's a lot less pressure going in. I really just go in and feel like it's kind of just like any other scrim or any other day, and having that pressure put off of me, I feel like has really let me play a lot better. And also I really just have to give a lot of props to Huhi. I think he's just been playing really, really, really well. And obviously bot lane is a 2-man team, so yeah, I have to give a lot of praise to Huhi.
I love the love that you're showing for your fellow laner in this, and props to you and the rest of Golden Guardians for such a strong performance here today. Thanks for taking the time for me.
Thank you.
All right, back to you.
Thank you very much, the Tigress. FBI, again, popping off, getting that first franchise win for Golden Guardians, but even himself citing probably the remote environment maybe aiding him a bit in the nerves department.
Yeah. honestly, we talked about the online environment, I think, a lot last split, but this split, it just became so, like, natural, like, this is the way it is, that we forgot, yeah, we're not playing on stage anymore. So a lot of these players coming out of the woodwork, are maybe this is, like, their prime form, and they needed the confidence to show, like, we can play this way, and hopefully this will translate to stage, because, yeah, once we get to stage play, maybe these teams are a lot different than we're expecting them to be.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see how that continues, especially for his career going to the rest of the playoffs all being online. But then if they make Worlds or whatever, seeing if that can continue in other formats. Also, quick check-in: he's at 9,500 Twitter followers. Basically, we got him about 7,500
yesterday. Nicely done, everyone.
We got it. Everyone go follow at Victor Huang online.
Yes.
He's another 500, please, to get to 10K, and then I'll feel good about our best marksman in the league having 10K Twitter followers.
Yeah, get him.
He's still 2.9 million less than the real FBI. So
which
we
is
need to make him overtake FBI.
Yeah, we all know who the real FBI is. Yeah. So if we could just, scoot him up to 3 million real quick, that'd be great. But seriously, go follow the man because he's a monster. All right, let's take a look at the bracket because we talk about them wanting to continue climbing through it and maybe contest for a world spot. Well, to do it, they're going to have to get through this behemoth of a playoff bracket. As you can see there, Team Liquid waiting to choose their opponent after today's results. Cloud9 will get the remaining opponent. TSM already down there on the loser's side, Mark.
Yeah, and it's crazy to see that already having to play for their lives against Dignitas. And I think Golden Guardians looked good enough in this win that depending on how FlyQuest looks today, I could even see Team Liquid picking FlyQuest. Golden Guardians looked really, really good. And I actually think with how strong their early game is and the struggles that C9 has been having themselves in the mid game, it's totally possible that this playoff winner bracket run could continue for Golden Guardians. I don't think that they can beat TL, but I think that they actually have a chance against C9.
So that requires a world where FlyQuest looks bad enough,
shaky versus EG today.
that TL wants to play against
FlyQuest over Golden Guardians.
FlyQuest, exactly, over Golden Guardians. Probably your point. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean it's going to be really curious looking forward because do you remember last split where we were going into playoffs and FlyQuest was having a downturn, but then Cloud9 didn't pick them, Cloud9 didn't pick FlyQuest, and that was a really curious one. So I know like the standings look even if FlyQuest looks shaky today, I think teams are going to be making these decisions based on like the scrims they had with them. So it's really, really hard to predict. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're all like, oh yeah, they're totally going to pick Golden Guardians. And then they
don't read into those seeds too much. Yeah, don't read into those seeds too much. While all of this conversation around the teams has been happening, though, we've also had conversations around the individuals on them. The ballots have been cast for the postseason awards, including the race for Honda MVP. And today, the LCS announced the All-Pro teams, which Mark touted as the most difficult All-Pro vote earlier this week on The Dive. Scrolling through each of them right now.
Yeah, and there you have it, your first team, Licorice, Blabber, Bjergsen, Sven, and Core JJ. For my own personal vote, just to speak about how difficult it was, I actually had a member of each of the top 5 teams in my first All-Pro vote, which is something is almost never true. A lot of the times, voting is, okay, the best players on the best teams, yada, 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 you kind of fill it in. But it was so back and forth. C9 were so hot and so cold in the second half. There's so many interesting storylines and players stepping up this split that it was really hard to pick. But I still think, just looking at that first pro team, Bjergsen is someone who jumps out, I think, because of how they lost today. But it is a regular season award, and he was critical in picking up a lot of wins for that team.
Yeah, I mean, and usually in the first All-Pro, we see it's mostly made up of the first place regular season team. And this time, we have 3 C9 members who are the second place. I mean, I will say their first half of the split was so dominant, and they finished only 2 games away from TL. So I know, Mark, you said yesterday that this was like TL's best regular season. So I'm not like crazy surprised, but it is, I feel like the first time where we're like, yeah, where's the first place team? We only have 1 member, which was Core JJ on the first All-Pro team.
It was. Again, I align with you, Mark, that this was the toughest All-Pro voting that we've ever had to do, and with you probably as well on the point around Cloud9 members at the top, wondering how much of that 9-0 start, the dominance, and even maybe to some degree the perceived ceiling of Cloud9, whether or not it was attained, but the perceived ceiling of those players played into the voting at all. Of course, the one person we haven't talked about was the one that everybody was happy to vote for, Core JJ, frontrunner right now for Honda MVP.
Frontrunner had the most votes of anyone on the first All-Pro team, and like Prawley said, he's the only one from the first place team. So that just speaks to how good Core JJ was this split. I think he won a number of games for Team Liquid with his own playmaking and ability to influence the map, his roams, his vision score. There's nothing that this guy can't do.
Yeah, even in their shaky wins, he was always really impressive. Like, I can't, for the life of me, think of a game where I was just like, CoreJJ, what are you doing? It was almost always, CoreJJ, how did you do that?
I like it. I like it. Let's talk about second All-Pro, though, as well, because while there are 3 Cloud9 members up there on the first team, we jumped down to second All-Pro. And interestingly enough to me is that 100 Thieves Someday is up there while being on the 7th place team.
Yeah, Someday's always going to be stuck around the second place until the 100 Thieves start making a higher run in the regular season, because he's just a complete monster of a top laner. I think if you ask any of the laners in LCS, they're always going to say, like, Someday's actually really scary, especially his, like, carry performance. If he gets a lead or if he gets resources, he can just solo take over a game. So he's such a big issue to deal with. It's not a big surprise that he's really high up on the top laner All-Pro.
Yeah, and I was looking at Jensen as well. He actually had the most points of anyone on the second All-Pro team, so everyone kind of acknowledged how good he was. He was in the MVP conversation for a little bit before the votes kind of, I think, are going to end up more behind CoreJJ, but Jensen had an incredible split as well, kind of the main engine for a lot of the wins, playmaking, and setup for the team, and being the primary carry, so Jensen also had an incredible split.
Yeah, and quietly, as always, it's Santorin in that second All-Pro. What a legendary jungler. He's been playing so well. Like, it's not really a surprise that he's in second All-Pro. I mean, Mark, you kind of gave away your votes earlier.
Yeah, dude, I love Santorin. I think he is so incredible. He was consistent the entire split, and he does it in a meta where he's playing Trundle pretty much all the time. That and Volley are set, more frontline champions. A lot of people are playing Olafs and running over the game in the first-person portion of the season, like Blabber and Contracts, and it's a lot more, it's better for catching your eye, but I think Santorin actually had a better split than a lot of basically any other jungler in the league. Always making level 2 ganks happen, always frontlining, always having an influence on the map, never mispositioning, it felt like, never having a bad game, and by far, I think, the most consistent player in the jungle.
I was with you. He was also my vote for first team All-Pro for the junglers. Santorin, again, big part of the success for spring for FlyQuest, looking to repeat that success and then some here in the summer postseason. Let's talk about the third All-Pro team, our first ever tie in the mid lane here. Niski and Power of Evil sharing that spot.
It's surprising it's taking this long to get to a tie, but I think it speaks to, this crazy split that we've had, as well as the different play styles of the two players. I think Niski and PoE are basically polar opposites of the mid lane carry spectrum.
Yeah, and I think little things like Niski having such a strong performance in the early split and then their kind of transition into experimenting really allowed Power Evil to kind of resurge a bit. When FlyQuest found their identity again, Power Evil started being that dominant mid laner, so I wasn't too surprised, or I'll say I was definitely surprised by the tie, but I wasn't crazy that it was between PoE and Niski.
Yeah, another one that was close was that bot laner vote between second and third team. Only 8 points separating Tactical and FBI. Mark, again, we've already been talking plenty about FBI's success for Golden Guardians and how it played into yesterday's series, but Tactical as well, another young 80 carry who has impressed this split.
Yeah, Tactical was on the second All-Pro team, and it was tough between the 80 carries. Even Doublelift had a pretty good split. There was a number of people, I think, and this is where we start getting into the snubs conversation, because there were a lot of people, I think, that everyone felt bad leaving off their ballots. Huhi, laning with FBI, didn't quite make it. Afro had a great split. Like, there's so many people that you can look at this split and be like, ooh, they maybe got it in another split.
Yeah, solo for
in the top lane.
Yep, there he goes. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. When I didn't see him, I was like, oh, Impact won? But I was like, yeah, Impact's good too. So it felt like, just always torn between, like, I want this guy to win, but this guy's also good. And it's just this constant, like, aggravating argument in my head.
I don't know about you guys, but personally, I prefer this. I prefer a league where it's more difficult and where there are going to be some snubs. I would rather be having this conversation around who didn't get the award and maybe deserved it than saying, oh, we know who the first All-Pro team is, everyone on the first place team, and then it doesn't matter after that. And this time, it feels like it matters.
Yeah, and I love that, and I think a lot of times people, like we said, default to, like, first place, but a lot of times it did feel like it fit. This time was definitely a crazier split than ever.
And it speaks to what might be a very awesome postseason. We're going to take a quick breather as we go. Avali teamed up with Evil Geniuses to give you the heartwarming story you've all been waiting for about a man and his cat.
Hello and welcome to our mini this or that with Kobe and Dash.
A tiny
Let's get
tot.
into some Evil Geniuses versus FlyQuest specialty.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Higher ceiling, Svenskeren or Santorin? Let me remind you, Svenskeren won the MVP at his ceiling.
Yeah, and that's where I was leaning, but I was wondering to myself, am I leaning that way simply because he's a playmaker, right? Like he's that idea of a
Playmakers
playmaker.
would have higher ceilings, in my
I
opinion.
guess that's
So-
true. Well, but yeah. Okay, there it is. He is. Yes, he is. He's got the higher skill ceiling. I think Santorin's the better jungler, but I think
yeah.
Sven has the higher ceiling.
Yeah. All right. I think we are in accordance then with slide number 1. Because Santorin has been a really good for FlyQuest, especially during their 5-0 run that they've gone. More YOLO player. Is it Huni? Is it Wild Turtle? If we're doing current state of the game, it has been Huni. Did you see Huni with his attempted, Camille flanks and stuff? Boom, he got popped immediately. There are a lot of points where Huni's the one dying, whereas Wild Turtle recently, very consistent, just firing ash arrows, sniping people, playing a lot safer, has not died nearly as much.
I think it's 100% Huni, and I would say almost always. We have this image of a super aggressive Wild Turtle, and yes, he is one of the more aggressive of all the AD carries, but I also think he appears more aggressive because he's an AD carry. So anytime an AD carry flashes forward, we're like, oh my God, it's such a big deal. When Huni flashes forward, that's just another day in the life of Huni. That's just what Huni does. So it's 100% Huni, the more yellow player.
All right, me too. Next slide. Are we going to agree on all 3? Can we get the trifecta? Playoff series, stress reliever, Nexus splits or ARAM?
I know what Azale would choose.
Yeah, so I was really hot on Nexus splits because it's it's something new. But then it really does start to get to you if you play it a while, and the rewards are just so different. The cart thing is really fun, where you're driving around on your stupid little cart and trying to run into people. But if the other team just gets the Elder Dragon thing, is executing people, it feels pretty annoying.
Yeah, I think the ceiling, to go back to another slide, of Nexus splits is higher. There are some games that are a ton of fun. If you get the right champs and the right mini games, I'm having a blast. But I think on average, ARAM, is better because I know what to expect. I'm gonna get to just practice pure champion fighting, in 5v5 scenarios in a singular lane. So I think when it comes to a stress reliever, I'm gonna go ARAM, because you just run it down the mid lane. Just run it down the mid lane over and over again.
It's a really important point that you bring up, like the actual question of being a stress reliever, because there's a reason why people always favor consistency in things like that. People will watch the same TV shows over and over just because they know what to expect. It won't, give them anything that's going to cause them more stress. Whereas Nexus Splits, being new, is inherently worse of a stress reliever. Gonna create more anxiety there with all the unexpected.
Go with what you know, baby. Go with what you know. And inting it down the mid lane, we're all good at that. So.
Scientific analysis on this this or that slide for number 3. We really got into that one. Let's get into the playoffs. We're gonna send you right back to the desk for some more analysis.
Playoffs, baby.
Well, thank you very much, Kobe, and that handsome Devil Dash. Welcome back to LCS Countdown. We're gearing up for Evil Geniuses versus FlyQuest, the next series to hit your screens. Outside of the obvious stakes weighing on any playoff match, FlyQuest and Evil Geniuses have more on the line than a title and world qualifications. FlyQuest has announced an update to their split-long Sea Quest, now called Deep Sea Quest. Each kill is now $2. Each Ocean Drake, $20. Each victory is now $200. If FlyQuest wins a series, they'll donate $1,000. And finally, if they win the whole thing, the championship, $10K for the Deep Sea Quest. Now, Evil Geniuses, they didn't want to miss out on all this fun, so they're also upping the ante. If you didn't already know, Evil Geniuses have been holding a fish-eating contest, which they're doubling down on as well. For each kill on FlyQuest, they will donate $15 to the WWF. And for every Ocean Drake, Ocean Soul, Baron, or Victory, their wildlife adoptions will up to 2 adoptions per objective. So no matter who comes out on top in the game, good or evil, charity wins. And therefore everyone wins. All right, gents, let's talk EG versus FlyQuest. In just a year of facing off against one another, FlyQuest and Evil Geniuses have developed a budding rivalry, and I'm excited to see them face off again, given how their last playoff match went.
Yeah, you got to remember, in spring playoffs, FlyQuest was still experimenting between Viper and Solo, and, they eventually settled on Solo, but not before they lost to EG in the upper bracket. They made a run through losers bracket with Solo, remet just in the semifinals, took them out, and made their first finals appearance with Solo. Now, in summer, FlyQuest has kept getting the better of them. They are 2-0 in the regular season. They look a lot better coming into this actual playoff match. And though the head-to-head between them is still actually relatively close, it does feel like all the momentum is with FlyQuest right now.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, it's a bit of a evolution that these teams have gone through. Like, FlyQuest was such a slow team back then, and that was partially why we were underrating them. But since they came into summer, before their little slump, they were actually really aggressive. Their kills per minute were almost double what they had in spring. And again, they had the little slump, and now they're kind of coming back into form.
There's that pretty close head-to-head you were talking about.
Pretty
Mark.
close as in equal.
Yeah, some might say 6-6 is pretty close.
2-2 and 1-1. All right, but to be fair, it's a different EG lineup.
Yes.
Now there's been a lot of changes. Golden Glue has come in because before it was PoE versus Jizuke, the mad scientist versus kind of also a mad scientist with PoE's builds, but at least playstyle-wise, pretty consistent. Now Golden Glue is expected to be the consistent one for his team, and I think he's done that job pretty well, but the rest of the team is still very, very inconsistent around him.
I think the fear here for me, probably, is that in some ways Golden Glue feels like a Power of Evil, just on a slightly lesser scale.
Yeah, I mean, Power of Evil, again, is mostly control mages. I would say Golden Glue has fit into that. His probably best game this split was the Azir against GGS a couple weeks ago. But really, the whole teams are very different. EG, again, when they were able to have success in spring, it was off of Jizuke. And then in the playoffs of spring, it was off the back of Bang. But now in summer, yeah, Jizuke's gone, Golden Glue's back, and Bang's kind of been absent, so it really has been, Golden Glue's last Azir performance was the biggest standout performance on EG recently, so I'm kind of curious, who's going to be the carrier of this team?
Yeah, it is a big question, and one of the places you would look for Evil Geniuses is rather in the jungle position. You heard Kobe and I kind of talking about the different skill ceilings of the players. Santorin way more consistent, but Sven has put up MVP splits in the past.
And to be fair, it's quietly better than I think even myself had realized, but he is always the kind of player who's looking for aggressive plays. He's still really good in the early game. It's just that we're talking about these inconsistencies, and Sven is someone who will not change his play style if a team is playing bad. He will be the first into the breach every single time and will probably die for it. And so when a team is struggling, he tends to look a lot worse than he really is, and I think that's kind of what's going on with EG here. He's still really good, but the rest of the team needs to step up with him to follow up on his plays a little bit better.
Yeah.
Right. Go ahead, probably.
I'm going to say I'm not on this or that or anything like that, but when you guys are talking about ceiling, for example, I don't know, I'd say mechanical ceiling, yeah, I'd give it to Svenskeren, but the way Santorin's been improving, I kind of give him the play style ceiling because he's been just wrecking it with the level 2 ganks, just being able to play all these champions really successfully, like the Trundle and even more aggressive champions. I think he kind of gets it right now.
All right, probably coming to a this or that near you soon. Let's talk about other players who might need to step up alongside it. Probably you talked about Bang. We've seen some highlight performances from him in the past, but he's also been somewhat under the radar for the majority of Summer Split as of yet.
Yeah, so Bang and Zeyzal, they weren't a really lane dominant like we saw FBI and Huhi yesterday, but they have been teamfight dominant, where they're going to be picking these scaling picks. They're going to really be able to perform evenly in the bot lane, and then in team fights, they're going to be the ones to carry their team where, Svenskaren's maybe setting up the fight and Golden Glue's helping. It's usually going to be Bang and Zeyzal making the biggest plays to win them the game.
Flip side, Mark, Wild Turtle coming back in to save the split.
Yeah, they are 8-2 with Turtle, and those 2 losses are only to C9. He has been incredible, and I think would have potentially pushed on the All-Pro lineup if he had the full split underneath him. He had those 10 games, so not quite, but he is dominating in a number of categories in North America. The only things that hurt him are his laning stats, but that's because he's playing with Ignar, the highest roaming jungler in the league. So he's often sitting back and holding out before he can finally find his moments to go in and make big plays.
What was that, probably?
Oh,
was that just...
said He said that Ignore was the highest roaming jungler, and I was like, you mean support?
Support. He may
as well be a jungler.
He's basically, FlyQuest second tier jungler.
Hard to make all pro as an AD carry when your support is playing jungle. All right, well, lots of matchups to keep track of in our battle of good versus evil. Our second series of the Summer Playoffs is about to begin, so with that, we're going to send it over to our casters. Game 1 of FlyQuest versus Evil Geniuses. Enjoy.